That's Mr. Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. He's not always the sexiest name out there right now. He is down 5.1 spots. ADP is at 54. Finishes a wide receiver 31 last year. I believe he had about 5 touchdowns. Yeah, but he did catch 71.3% of his targets, which is pretty good. But Pete, I'll go to you first on this one, unless you're busy chewing on pretzels, and I'll just find a way to waste time talking.
Nah, that's okay.
What says you on Zay Flowers with the Baltimore Ravens?
So I actually don't have a single share of Zay Flowers in best ball. Crazy enough, maybe 1 or 2 where I got auto drafted.
1 or 2.
Yeah, but look, my thing with Flowers, 45th in yards per route run last year. He's not a guy that's catching many passes deep. That's indicative of the low yards per route run. And look, if there's a guy to own, it's Mark Andrews in the pass catching weapons. But look, Derrick Henry coming in, that worries me even more for Zay Flowers. This is a guy who doesn't score touchdowns or scored 5 last year, and he's not a big red zone threat as it is. It seems like it's pretty much Lamar, Andrews, or Derrick Henry. Andrews was 50% of the target share in the red zone last year for this team. You add in Henry. I just don't know if there's enough for Zay Flowers to beat this ADP. I still think it's way too expensive for me, and I'm personally out on him at the cost.
Steve, you got something there?
Yeah, I like Zay Flowers. I've been drafting him. I really like his talent. I understand Henry coming in. They could run the ball more, but it could open up things too for the passing game. Plus, it's second year in the Monken offense, and Zay Flowers is also in his second year, and he is a deep threat. He could get deep. Yeah. It's not like, so maybe they utilize that more. That isn't his repertoire. So I like Zay Flowers. You get him in the 4th round. He's a secondary guy. With Pickens not Pickens, but with T. Higgins. Rashee Rice is also nice in that spot, but I don't mind mixing in a little Zay Flowers there. I see some upside. I could see, because Lamar historically, he just loves the middle of the field. He loves Mark Andrews. Well, Mark Andrews.
Let me ask you, Steve. I'm going to cut you off, but if you were a team because you draft a lot of teams like Anthony, so talking to more somebody who, hey, I'm in 2-3 leagues, would you prefer him over T. Higgins, who goes around him? Because you and Anthony talk variance, which makes a lot of sense. But
it's close for me.
Might not be drafting a lot of teams.
T. Higgins, I think if Burrow stays healthy, I think he's the better receiver overall. So I would give the slight edge to T, and I would give the edge to Amari Cooper as well. I could see him outperforming Zay Flowers, though. George Pickens, though. George Pickens still has questions. He's still a little bit of a head case. Sure. He's still a little lazy on his route running. Rashee Rice now with the Hollywood Brown injury, and no suspension looming, it seems like I probably would prefer him too. But, yeah, so, you have a good point there. If I'm only in a couple leagues, maybe those guys make a little bit more sense. But I still like Zay Flowers' talent. I still think he could elevate. He's a dangerous receiver. So it's just about Lamar kind of hitting those boundaries a little bit more throughout his career. He just likes to stay in the middle of the field. So, but Zay could operate in the slot. He could get, they can use him on reverses, screen passes, stuff like that. And again, like I mentioned, second year in the system, second year for Zay Flowers. So I expect a better season than his rookie year.
Oh, there's my dog barking. Anthony, did you have anything on Zay Flowers?
Yeah, I do. So number 1 on Zay Flowers, I'm similar to Pete. I don't have a lot of Zay Flowers outside of maybe some Dynasty stock. Again, variance. I play a lot of teams, maybe 1 or 2. I'll grab of him. I don't see a lot of ceiling with Zay Flowers. And, 108 targets last year, 6.8 per game. Nice receiver, nice PPR floor. But when it comes to the ceiling, I'm very skeptical. He only had 5 total touchdowns. To put things in perspective, last year, Mark Andrews in 10 games had 6 touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar had 4 touchdowns. So, he's not really, and if you look at the metrics, 21st in deep targets was Zay Flowers. 28th in red zone targets was Zay Flowers. So he, I don't know what the comp is. Is it like Amon-Ra St. Brown? You can say that because he's great in PPR, but Amon-Ra actually gets used more in the red zone. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a realistic comp, but the thing that throws a monkey wrench into a Zay Flowers ceiling for me is Mark Andrews in the red zone, right? Because Andrews had 6.1 targets per game, and Flowers, like I said, had 6.8. So the tiebreaker usually, okay, who's in the money zone? Like, who's the money zone guy? Well, Mark Andrews last year in 10 games, he was sixth amongst tight ends in red zone targets.
Yep.
And he missed 7 regular season games. And then he was second amongst tight ends in touchdowns, missing 7 games. So it is clear to me that in the red zone, it's going to be Andrews, and it's going to be Derrick Henry, and of course, Lamar is going to get his. So I just don't see a lot of room where Zay Flowers can add to his totals on the touchdown category. And he's not that much of a big play guy, like 11.1 yards per reception. So like he's almost like he's Christian Kirk. I think that's the comp. He's Christian Kirk to me.
He finished those last against Miami 3 for 106. Against Kansas City in the playoffs, 5 for 115. Also finishes 3 of his last 4 games. He finished with a touchdown. I know Andrews was banged up, but this offense could elevate. I mean, Lamar could have a better passing year than last year. Only threw 24 touchdowns last year. We could see a world where Lamar's throwing 30 touchdowns. So, I know he's never really reached that level, but I could see it. I mean,
again, he's only entering his second year, so I'm going off of a 1-year sample size.
Yeah,
but like for this year, I'm not taking a lot of him, just because I want to see it before I buy, because he's going around some nice players. So again, we play in these tournaments, and Steve, like you're in it, like where points and that ceiling matter, and wherever Zay Flowers is going. I think there are guys more like Pickens. Like, you don't like Pickens as much as I do. Obviously, if Ayuk goes to Pittsburgh, and I hope to God it doesn't happen. You do. Pickens. Okay, I forgot who doesn't like. Okay, so
I think it was
Hoff.
I like Pickens too.
I like
Pickens.
Yeah.
So where do you get that from?
I'm 100% in. Somebody called him a lazy route runner.
That was Steve.
Okay,
but he was talking about Flowers over Pickens. That's all he was saying.
That's my only issue with Pickens. He's little. He's got
takes
some
plays
issues
off a little bit.
I like Pickens, Cooper, DJ Moore, all over Zay Flowers, and obviously Rashee Rice over Zay Flowers. Oh, I'm just not going to have a lot of them.
The only other thing I would mention is, from the slot conversation with him too, Mark Andrews only had 12.3% of his snaps in line. So that means Mark Andrews just dominated the slot on this offense too. And if if that talk is true, that Isaiah Likely is going to be involved more, I think it's likely in line. And I think Mark Andrews is owning the slot. I mean, out of the top 30 tight ends last season, that in fantasy, Mark Andrews was the lowest in terms of inline snaps, which means this guy is running routes all day for this team. And keep in mind, Lamar only scored 5 rushing touchdowns last year. I mean, I think that might go up. I mean, I know Henry's there, but their running back scored 21 touchdowns last year. Henry probably gets 13, 14. That's my prediction this year. And I think Lamar probably gets closer to 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, that's just more touchdowns that I think are taken away from Flowers. And I think them bringing in Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, and what they did in the playoffs with Lamar, I think it just showed that, like, hey, maybe we do need to lean into this rushing thing more. Now, granted, they didn't they went complete opposite where they didn't run it at all in the playoffs. It didn't help Lamar at all. So they didn't give Lamar a fair shake, in my opinion. But maybe Steve's right. Maybe they get a little more balanced. But I think the addition of Henry, I think they're going to ride him pretty hard.
Yeah, Flowers 31% in the slot last year, 68% out wide. Yards per route run 1.7, but he does catch a lot of screens and short passes like that too, so that drops it.
Yeah.
So now, Anthony, I'll just address this to you, as I'm going to find a new home for my dog if he doesn't stop barking. William Stevenson did just say, though, I'm drafting a new job in this year's first round so I can stop missing half of these GD live shows. Sorry about that, William. Sorry about that. But Anthony, what I did want to say to you before we move off of, Yeah, Ronaldo said it's a lateral move for him, but I wanted to ask you, John McGlynn did say earlier, traded away Jaden Reed to get Zay Flowers straight up, half-point PPR dynasty, start 3 wide receivers. Anthony, I'll kick this to you, and then we'll get on to our next player. What says you on this trade?
So Jaden Reed for Flowers, and he got Flowers or moved him?
He got Flowers.
He got Flowers. He got Flowers.
I think that's a win. And I like Jaden Reed. There's just a lot of guys there where we just went over what's going on in Baltimore. Like they're already talking up Bateman. We already know how that's going to end. Nelson Aguilar is a guy. It's like, there's like a lot of guys there. And again, like who has the higher floor? Zay Flowers, obviously, I think has a higher floor than Jaden Reed. So yeah, I'm in on Zay Flowers on this one. Again, just because I'm out on him in this year's redraft doesn't mean I'm out on him in Dynasty. Like I just play a lot of tournaments, and so I just think of big points. But like in Dynasty, when points don't really matter, like in the playoffs, in these shootout type of tournaments, he's a great player to have on your team.